Pro wrestling is an entirely unique beast of entertainment, where the protagonists of the sport are very much in the public eye, but also secretive. The backstage environment of a wrestling show is an odd mix of completely open for all to see, but also closed off to hide its secrets. Combine this with wrestling personalities being some of the most, let's call them unique in history. The mixture of egos, industry secrets, and kayfabe make for a wonderful, mysterious cocktail of chaos. And over the years, there's been whispers and tales of thrilling stories from behind the scenes and on the road with wrestlers, especially in years gone by, when the wrestlers were men with guns and knives and all the other stuff The Undertaker said. And while some of the stories that have come out since are uncomfortable at best, others are just genuinely funny, with wrestlers pranking each other and just generally being naughty little boys. And today we're going to look at the funniest stories to come out behind the scenes in wrestling. I'm partsFUNknown from partsFUNknown, and these are the 10 funniest wrestling road stories. Before we dive in, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy, as we upload a bunch more lists and other fun wrestling content, like me and Luke playing against each other through WWE 2K22's My GM mode in our Monday Night War series. It's real good, I promise. Number 10. Nobody wanted to fire Haku. Haku is widely regarded as one of the toughest wrestlers to ever grace the squared circle. There are various stories that have shown why many fear the Tongan legend, such as when Brutus Beefcake badmouthed him to WWF management, so he ended up storming the showers and choking out the barber, as well as other stories of him punching cops and barroom brawls. Death, taxes, and you don't mess with Haku. Another story that will titillate the juices of your guilty wrestling pleasures is that during his time in WCW as Meng, Eric Bischoff admitted that there were discussions about releasing him from his contract. However, nobody wanted to be the one to break the news to Haku, presumably because they were terrified for their lives. He may just be the first wrestler to keep his job because people were petrified of the consequences if they fired him. Death, taxes, and you don't mess with Haku. Number 9. Terry Funk wrestles Ric Flair's dog. Terry Funk and Ric Flair had a memorable rivalry in 1989 that culminated in an epic I Quit match. Despite this feud, like many wrestlers who create magic together, Flair and Funk were good friends away from the ring. The two stars would share drinks with one another quite often, and on a rare day off, they did so at the Nature Boy's home. However, things turned sour and a fight broke out. Now, this wasn't a fight between the two wrestlers though, as one might expect, but it was between Funk and Flair's dog. Angered that Slick Rick's mutt bit him on the nose when he was playing with him, the Funkster started chasing the poor dog. And after a day out with her friends, Flair's wife returned to see Rick passed out in the house while Terry had a knife between his teeth chasing the dog around the garden. I don't know what the fuss is about. Sounds like a normal Tuesday in the partsFUNknown office to me. Number 8. DDP gets cookies in bed. Diamond Dallas Page is one of the most beloved wrestlers for his story of starting his wrestling career at the age of 35, as well as the incredible work he's done to help his peers such as Scott Hall and Jake the Snake Roberts. Page has forged some wonderful friendships in the business dating back to his time in WCW. Mick Foley and Steve Austin were two of these early friends in the company, but the two Hall of Famers made it their mission to prank and ruin DDP's life in 1993. A series of ribs had Page reeling, but he refused to crack until one more gag that Foley recalled in his first autobiography. He said a fan gave them a batch of chocolate chip cookies, so after Dallas took a shower, Austin and Foley dumped 36 cookies between the sheets of DDP's bed. As Page lay down, Mick went on to describe it as those delicious toll houses were starting to take effect. DDP started to wriggle and feel the cookies, screaming, "There's f***ing cookies in my bed! Someone put f***ing cookies in my bed!" Dallas screamed at the top of his lungs, "I want to know who put f***ing cookies in my bed right now." Foley couldn't hold back his laughter, soon giving himself away. But that's clearly the secret to bring up the negativity in positive Page. Cookies. Number 7. Bruce Pritchard pranks The Undertaker. The Undertaker is known for staying in character at the worst of times, so hearing of any funny backstage stories regarding the dead man is rare. More common are his rulings over wrestlers' core, but that's a story for another day. But this hasn't stopped him from being included on this list more than once. More on that later. Bruce Pritchard is one of Taker's closest friends in the business, with the former Brother Love being his original manager in WWF and being a creative force in many of his great storylines. This is why Pritchard decided to pull a prank on the respected locker room leader in 1996. Using Goldust as a catalyst in this one, Bruce instructed Dustin Rhodes to tease the dead man by touching his feet, chest, and even crawling up his leg as Taker laid flat on the mat during a commercial break before doing his signature sit-up. The Undertaker was furious when he returned backstage after the match, before Pritchard revealed it was a prank. Paul Goldust, who was hiding for his life, had a sigh of relief before all three had a healthy laugh about the rib. Number 6. Mr. Perfect leaves Ultimate Warrior a gift. When it comes to the Mount Rushmore of wrestling ribs, the late Mr. Perfect Curt Hennig has to be mentioned. Known for his sense of humor and habit of pulling pranks on his fellow wrestlers, Hennig had been behind some hysterical backstage moments in his day. One of his classic ribs found another late legend in the Ultimate Warrior on the receiving end. Warrior was notorious for being a bit of a prima donna in the late 80s and early 90s in the WWF locker room, which Mr. Perfect was determined to do something about. One night at a television taping, Warrior was to do a spot where he would emerge from underneath the ring. To do so, he had to sit under the squared circle for the last few matches of the show. Unfortunately for Warrior, Curt Hennig got there first. Perfect left the former WWF champion a nice little present in the form of a huge dump, and Warrior was forced to sit there with that unholy smell for an hour before his grand entrance in the main event. Curt Hennig, more like Mr. Poofict. Am I right, guys? Guys? Am I right? Number 5. X-Pac gets his eyebrows shaved off. Another candidate for the aforementioned Mount Rushmore of wrestling's most infamous ribbers is X-Pac Sean Waltman. During his first run with WWF, he was one of the youngest members of the roster and regularly made life hell for his co-workers. However, he got a taste of his own medicine courtesy of the Smokin' Guns, and once again, Mr. Perfect. Taking the then 1-2-3 kid out for his birthday, Perfect Billy and Bart Gunn pulled out a notable rib where they shaved Waltman's eyebrows off. As someone who willingly did that for charity, I can confirm it is arguably the worst thing I've ever done. Waltman would then have to appear on television and for his action figure box with this new look, making things very awkward for him indeed. Number 4. Owen Hart pranks Ahmed Johnson. In early 1996, it looked like Johnson was set to be one of WWF's breakout stars who would get a crack at the top of the card. With Vince McMahon's booking of Johnson up to that point, it didn't seem out of the question that he'd be featured on mainstream media before long, making Owen Hart's prank on Johnson all the more believable. Calling Johnson's hotel room one evening, Hart claimed to be from The Tonight Show and was interested in Ahmed potentially being a guest on the show. This call was so convincing that Johnson went out and bought expensive clothes to wear during the interview. He needed the drip for his big-time appearance. When Johnson was waiting outside the hotel for the limousine that was promised to take him to the studio, Owen came out to say that the car was late and laughed out loud to reveal that he was behind the gag. It's good that he had the heart to tell him. Heart. Guys? Number 3. Undertaker and the Cucumbers. Despite Undertaker and the Cucumbers being a fantastic band name, this isn't about that, though I wish it were. This is another prank being pulled on the leader of the Wiggly Woo Spooky crew, but this is one that required getting to know the man a little beforehand. The Dark Mark is known for inflicting fear in his opponents, but there isn't a lot of things that scares him more than cucumbers. That is a sentence that I just said. Apparently the Undertaker is not a fan of how cucumbers look or taste. Owen Hart is back at it again and took full advantage of this, putting a slice of cucumber on a cup of iced tea that Taker was going to drink from. Vern Calloway's weird uncle then drank from the cup until he discovered the slice at the bottom and proceeded to vomit on the spot. There is also a story of Paul Bearer placing a cucumber in Taker's signature headwear that delivered the same reaction. If only his WrestleMania opponents knew the secret to breaking the streak was a long green fruit. Yes, it is a fruit, don't at me. Number 2. CM Punk and Vince McMahon bunk with each other. CM Punk famously left WWE in 2014 thanks to his differences and animosity with then chairman and CEO Vince McMahon, and I'm sure that animosity at work will never be brought up again in any other company. This makes this little fact more shocking than funny, but don't worry, there are some laughs to be had. During a radio interview, Punk shared a story about sharing a room with McMahon during a tribute to the Troops tour in Iraq. The stars had bunk beds, with the now AEW star sharing one with JBL, while Vince McMahon had his own bunk that he insisted on sleeping on the top bunk bed even though the below bed was empty. When everyone decided to go to sleep, Vince stayed up and was passing gas loudly, to which he would then laugh, and then he would repeat the cycle of farting and laughing like he was inhaling his own laughing gas. Punk remained in his own bed in disbelief of what he was hearing, seeing, and smelling. And number 1, Mr. Perfect gives Yokozuna laxatives. Yeah, let's cap this thing off with what might possibly be the Mona Lisa of wrestling pranks courtesy of Mr. Perfect. The unfortunate soul on the receiving end of this rib was the late great Yokozuna, the two-time WWF champion as one of the most well-known big men in company history. Now, being a larger competitor in wrestling has its positives and negatives, of course. While Yokozuna saw the good side with his in-ring success, the downside showed itself when he would travel, particularly on plane rides. Yoko found it extremely difficult to fit in aircraft bathrooms, which gave Curt Hennig the perfect opportunity to pull this one off. Perfect gave Yokozuna some chocolate laced with laxatives, and when it became time for the big lad to clear his stomach, he couldn't do so in the bathroom. This led to a crash photograph the stewardess who improvised and allowed the big man to relieve himself out the back of the plane, holding a blanket to make sure no one saw him. And that's how I'm gonna leave you, with that image in your head. And that's our list. Are there any infamous stories we missed? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe and like the video if you haven't already, and check out some of our other lists and fun content as well. I've been Chopper P. Quinnell. Jam that jam.